Today we're going to talk about self-doubt and imposter syndrome. This is something that I think everyone struggles with. I know I do. Recently I spoke to an old friend on the phone and he confided in me that he feels like he shouldn't be in his current position. He had this productivity crushing anxiety because he felt like he didn't, or maybe he wasn't worthy when he compared himself to his peers. And that caught me off guard because he is one of the most accomplished pilots I know. He has earned every bit of his experience and he has the respect and admiration of his peers, friends, and family. I've known the guy since before he was a pilot. And it got me thinking, he isn't the first person to tell me that about themselves. I mean, I've worked with some very high performing tier one operators and they have the same type feelings. And hell, if I'm being honest, I feel that way a lot. I actually feel that way right now in this very moment with this podcast. We've all been there when it comes to self-doubt. How many times do you find yourself saying things like, I'm so stupid, or even in conversation with your significant other or coworker, you say something like, I'm an idiot, I forgot to pick up the milk, or whatever you did wrong. On the surface, it sounds lighthearted that, you can make fun of yourself, but here's the deal. Words mean things. I don't think our brains can tell the difference between when somebody else says something hurtful to us or when we say something hurtful to ourselves. No one would say, and I'm saying this in real life, no one would say you're an idiot, you forgot the milk. If they did, you probably need to reevaluate that relationship. But my point is, you would never say that about another person unless you're just a massive asshole. Yet we say it to ourselves all the time. And I'm telling you right now, I do this, folks. I do this on the daily. I'm my hardest critic. So on the surface, you don't really believe you're an idiot, but your brain hears what you say, and then the seeds of doubt are planted. It always starts out little. I forgot the milk. I'm an idiot. And then your brain or your persona constructs that into the next thing you know, you forgot the milk and you think to yourself, I can't even remember to buy the milk. How am I going to raise a child or keep this job or insert whatever you're going through at the time into this situation? So now your self-doubt seed is starting to sprout. So the next thing in that line of thinking is, I forgot to buy milk. I'm a failure at everything. Why try anymore? See the trend here? The final progression of self-doubt is quitting yourself and giving up. And the problem with this line of thinking is it's all bullshit. One mistake doesn't define who you are. When your mindset is negative, things that aren't even connected, i.e. forgetting to buy milk, equals failure at life. Now, who thinks that way? No one. No one looks at life that way because it's not grounded in reality. So, where do these seeds come from? So, I've been thinking about this a lot lately. I wonder if they come from your parents and your friends and your teachers very early from a very early age. And I kind of thought through this process and I came up with this kind of idea that those who are closest you those who are closest to you have the biggest shovel. So follow me through this example here. So I'm going to tell you maybe like a parable or just conceptually a small story to illustrate my point here. So Bill dreams of becoming an actor. At age 18, Bill decides to follow his dream and move to Hollywood. Bill starts waiting tables while trying to become an actor. Time goes by and success eludes Bill. He has done a few acting gigs, but nothing is really allowing him to be successful. 10 years go by and Bill is still waiting tables, and one day Bill runs into Jack from his hometown. Now, Jack is in Los Angeles on a business trip. He's decked out in the latest fashion. He's married a smoke show of a wife and has 3 kids, and his life is great. And Bill starts to compare his current situation to Jack. At this point, Bill is fed up with waiting tables. He's frustrated he hasn't achieved what he wants to, so he quits and he moves home. When he comes home, he takes a job at a local factory, which pays well, and eventually he meets the love of his life, Martha. Eventually, they buy a house and they have a kid, Bill Jr., and things are going great. He has a secure job, not making crazy money, but it's enough, and Bill is content. 18 years go by. Bill Jr. now wants to become an actor or a pilot or whatever he wants to do, but guess what? There's going to be some risk involved. So he talks about leaving and heading off to where his dreams are for this job he wants to pursue, or this insert whatever Bill Jr. wants to do. What advice do you think Bill Sr. is going to give Bill Jr.? He's going to say, stay at home, choose the safe route. It's hard out there. The world will chew you up and spit you out. Learn from my mistakes. Don't do it. Stay home. And there it is. The one person in the world that loves Bill Jr. more than anything planted the seed. Now, albeit unintentionally, we all want the best for our children or our spouse or our friends. But in this example, Bill Sr. inadvertently planted the seed that Bill Jr. is not capable of overcoming the obstacles to get to where he wants to be. And by that I mean those closest to you often have the biggest shovels because they're digging a hole deep to put those seeds in. And I know it's kind of a stretch. I didn't have anything better, but that's kind of what I came up with, so sue me. So Bill Jr. is now taking subtle cues from his father, but we have moved straight to why even try? If my dad couldn't do it, what makes me think I can do it? You see the natural progression here and that kind of line of thinking? It's generational. So going back to the example of Bill Jr. thinking if his dad couldn't do it, then how could he? This is a perfect segue to introduce your friend and mine, Imposter Syndrome. Now, Imposter Syndrome is not fun. I know because I deal with it on the daily. What is Imposter Syndrome? Well, the way I understand it is Imposter Syndrome is a false belief that your successes are only attributed to luck or fraud rather than actual skill. For some folks, this thought pattern is crippling, especially when you combine it with seeds of doubt. Now, I've struggled with this my whole life. You see, a lot of type A people, or folks that work in aggressive style jobs or vocations, those kind of alpha male type folks, and you see a lot of them in aviation and athletics. And I suspect there's some degree of this taking place in like medicine or medical careers or STEM careers, and probably like lawyers and things like that. And for me, the pattern kind of goes like this. I get a new job or a new position or even a new task. And I look around at all the folks in my new job and I think, and the key word here is think, that they have more experience than me. So my anxiety starts creeping. And that anxiety is the water for the seeds of doubt. So how do I settle down the anxiety? How do I think I control it? What I do is I either over prepare or sometimes I'll just procrastinate. With over preparation, I tend to hyper focus on that new job or task or whatever the latest thing I'm working is. But I'm not making the kind of progress I feel that I should make. And that's where the seeds of doubt are there. This can sometimes further the anxiety. Now I'm double anxious because I'm spending valuable time over preparing and not spending the times that I think that I need to spend with the things that I think that need to be done or the people that I need to spend that time with. Now self-destroying talk comes in. How dumb are you that you studied for 6 hours and you can barely retain any of the information? Not only did you not retain anything, but you missed out on family time. You're a failure at life. So see how this kind of feedback loop comes back in. So now I'm triple anxious, and my seeds are really growing right now. And eventually, I'll get through the new position or task, and there's like a plateau moment where I do have some relief, and I start to feel content. And then I got another seed of doubt sprout, and it was in my head. I might be thinking, it was just luck that I made it through that last task or that last job. I was the only candidate that they had. They had to choose me. And now the anxiety comes back, and now your new seed is a full-on sapling, and you feel like a fraud or a failure. And then you get a new job or task, and then the cycle goes around again. So I think there are two sides to imposter syndrome. Now, again, I want to throw the disclaimer out that I'm not a psychologist. I'm not trained in any of this. This is shit I'm pulling out of my ass that I'm just thinking off the top of my head. And that's not true. I didn't think it off the top of my head. These are the things I'm taking a shower and I'm thinking about, or laying in bed at night. I know it's kind of strange, but it's where my brain goes. So when we talk about imposter syndrome, for me, I think we can break that down into two sides or two categories. One side is what I would call warranted or justified, and the other is unwarranted or not justified or unjustified. One is real and the other is in your head. So hear me out on this. So let's say you want to learn something new, or maybe you take a new job and you've never done the thing that you were pursuing. And maybe you did similar things, but it's not the actual same thing or task or vocation that you're doing. You look around and you see that everyone else is better than you or has the skill set to do what they're doing, but not you, and you feel like an imposter. This is what I would consider warranted. Your skill set is below the learning curve, meaning you have not developed the skill set to be successful in this new endeavor because it's new and you've never done this before. In this case, imposter syndrome is warranted at this, when we talk about this particular moment in time. You are an imposter because you've never done this before. But that doesn't mean you can't bring your skill set higher than the learning curve. And once your skill set is above the learning curve for that endeavor you are now able to do the thing with minimal practice. So there's a great movie from the late 90s, and it's called The 13th Warrior. And it's based on a book by Michael Crichton called Eaters of the Dead. It's a great book. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I highly recommend reading it. And the premise is a very loose adaptation of the tale of, you probably remember from school, of Beowulf. And they combined it with this guy named Ahmad ibn Fadlan, his historical account of the Volga Vikings. So they kind of just took some factual history and some classical literature and kind of made this movie, or Michael Crichton made the book based on that. And I'll talk about in the movie because there's one scene in the movie in particular that I love, and Antonio Banderas plays the character of Ahmad ibn Fadlan, who he has kind of been exiled as a ambassador. I'm doing air quotes there. He's pretty much been exiled out of the kingdom, and he's an Arab, so he's kind of an ambassador to these Vikings in the Volga region. And the Volga region is like kind of like Ukraine, that Eastern Europe kind of area where the Volga River plays a part, you can find the Volga River in that area. So in the movie, the scene that I love is the Vikings and Ahmad are getting off the Viking ship, and they're preparing for this overland journey north. And one of the Vikings throws Ahmad, who is notably smaller in stature than the other Vikings or the other guys. And he throws him this large Viking sword and says, "Here, you'll need this." Now Ahmad catches it and he can barely hold up the sword. He says, "I'm gonna lift this." And the Viking just simply responds, "Grow stronger." And it's so like, well, just get stronger, dude. What's the problem? And I really like that scene on multiple levels, but for the purpose of what we're talking about here is that's a classic case of warranted imposter syndrome. Ahmad, in reality, was weaker and smaller than his Viking comrades. He had never been a warrior before because he was an academic, and so all this was new to him. So the other side to imposter syndrome is unwarranted, or it's not justified. It's not grounded in reality. So an example of this would be you take a new job or a new position or a new task, and it's your first day, and you're making small talk with a group of new hires, and everyone is given little pieces of their background and what they did before, or who they work for, or, what their experiences were. And you don't have the same level of experience as they do. And in your mind, you're inexperienced compared to the other new hires, and you feel like an imposter. You don't deserve to be there. You didn't earn it. These guys have years of experience, and I don't. In that case, a self doubt seed sprouts, and they have more experience than me. When I tell them this is my first job or my first time in this career field, they're going to judge me and they're going to find out I'm a fraud. But is this thought pattern warranted? Your new cohorts said they have experience, but have you seen the experience they talk about put into action? How do you know they're any good at what they say they're good at? Do you believe everything you see on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram? Do you really believe that John is so humble to take this new position? You see guys like put that on LinkedIn all the time. I'm so humbled and honored to take this new position. Dude, if you were so humble and honored to take the new position, you wouldn't be blasting it all over social media. Do you really think that Sally's life is great? That she took a trip to Italy and the pictures of her and her triple wimp 1 pump of plant-based soy chai latte is an indicator that she's better than you? I mean, do you really think that Jimmy's steak dinner he took a picture of last night at whatever steakhouse he went to solidifies he's living his best life? This is what people do. They bullshit people. Don't believe their bullshit. They put their pants on just like you. Wait for the results. Oh, and when I say wait for the results, I mean wait for the results of their actions based on what they're saying. You, you have to. Let me say it like this. Let me try to give a little story to correlate this to real stuff. So a while back, my company hired 2 pilots at the same time. Both were not qualified in the Black Hawk. So one guy was a very senior aviator, thousands and thousands of hours. I think he was over 10,000 hours. So for a helicopter guy, that's a lot. This guy had flown everything there was to fly, and by all measures, hearing him talk, this guy was Chuck Yeager. Now, the other guy we hired was a very junior pilot. He hadn't flown a lot, and he didn't have a lot of experience. The experienced guy was a real cool hand Luke. Like, everybody liked him, and he could talk the talk, and he sounded professional. The junior guy couldn't really contribute to the conversations we would be having because he just didn't have the experience to hang kind of with the big boys and talk about the things they'd done in the past. And the first couple days, that I could tell the junior guy was struggling a little bit, but eventually he came up to me and he said, "Hey, I don't know if I'm really cut out to do this. I don't have the same experiences as you, and I'm worried that I'm not going to pass my check ride." And keep in mind, this is like day 2 into 30 days of his training period. So I try to illustrate this, verbally illustrate this to tell you, who do you think is still with the company and who do you think couldn't progress and is no longer with the company? Now, you'd probably think it was the really senior experienced guy, but the truth is that guy was full of shit. He had a lot of experience, but he didn't make it through the training. Not that our training is hard, it's just the guy was a little long in the tooth. He had everything on paper, but he didn't have the heart to see it through. The junior guy, although he didn't have the pedigree and the hours and the skill set, had the one thing the senior guy didn't have, and that was heart. He gave 110%, and he brought his skill set above his learning curve, and he's now doing great. He grew stronger, like in the movie I just talked about. See how I did that? I like tied those together. So everyone has issues. Imposter syndrome in this instance, in this story about you look around and, or the guy I was talking about that didn't have the experience, it wasn't grounded in facts. There is no reason at this point to acknowledge your imposter syndrome. It's a fallacy. It's a lie because you haven't had the chance to do the job to prove that you have what it takes, and neither have the other guys. Talk is cheap. You have to show me. Now, later in time, when you realize that your skill set is below the learning curve, now you got to move that imposter syndrome into warranted imposter syndrome. So does that make sense? So just like in the example, the on day 2, that junior pilot had unwarranted imposter syndrome. He was making an inference on the other guy's talk. But when he got in the course, he did struggle a bit, and he shifted his thought patterns into warranted imposter syndrome. And he accepted that his skill set was slightly below what was required. And I want to go back to that. Is he accepted that he was below what was required, but he allowed himself some grace to learn, and he got through. To this day, we often use him as a model student pilot of this is what's right looks like. This is what success looks like. So what are some signs and symptoms of imposter syndrome? So I'm just going to kind of go through some things that I kind of think. But one of the biggest signs or symptoms, I guess you could say, is not believing your success is earned by your efforts. You view your success as a chance, or you view your success as chance or fate or some kind of outside variables impacting your success. You feel inadequate, and we're talking experience, education, insert whatever you want here, just that feeling of inadequate. You're unable to be proud of your own success. And I'm not talking about like being arrogant. I'm just talking about giving yourself a pat on the back. Hey, I can't stop now. I can't congratulate myself now. I still got to, do A, B, and C to get to where I want to be. You over exaggerate your failures and flaws. I've seen people do that all the time to the point it's annoying. And then here's my personal favorite. You feel the need to be special or be best in whatever you do in order to have value. Man, this one is just me to a T. Or let me say that again. You feel the need to be special or best in order to have value. Now, this is me to a T. As I mentioned in episode 1, self-worth or value is, and believe me, I'm working on changing this, is tied to how well I perform in my career, and to a lesser extent, the career itself. For some people, this might look like avoiding a new opportunity or a new challenge for fear that you won't be able to complete them or you'll look stupid. And for me, I find myself placing value on my ability to do it all and to do it all with excellence, which when you're learning something is just not realistic. So, like in this podcast, I've struggled with not even announcing that I'm doing a podcast, on social media because I feel like people will think I'm stupid, or maybe I'm going to get 4 episodes in and realize like it's a lot more work than I thought. I'm going to stress myself out. And I go in this feedback loop of negative thought and imposter syndrome, and it sucks. And the bad news about it sucking is no one is coming. It's up to us. But the good news is no one is coming, and it's up to us. You can change. I can change. We can change. So before we get into the tactics, techniques, and procedures, or what we'd say in the military, TTPs, we need to see if we qualify as a person who is mentally able to benefit from this advice. So first question is, do you have a brain? Number 2, do you have a pulse? So if you answered yes to either of these questions, then you have everything it takes to beat this. So here's how we're going to beat it. Here's our TTPs. Number 1, focus on real things, just the facts. Typically, emotions are based in fear, not facts. Separate your fear from the facts. And again, guys, I do this on the daily. I will take something that was a text or an email completely out of context as I'm putting my emotion or my fear of what I think the person is saying, and I'm pulling that out of something that they just simply aren't saying. It sucks. I'm working on it. Number 2, shift your perspective. So like I said with seeds of doubt, your brain recognizes the negative thought patterns, but it also recognizes positive thought patterns. If you shift your perspective by thinking of yourself in a positive way, you begin to see yourself as deserving of your place. And that translates into deserving of your new job or task. And you can accept your achievements. When you can accept your achievements, you can accept yourself. And now you're on the road to contentment. I think. I'm trying this. So far it's working. Number 3, grow stronger and achieve the clinch. So this is your warranted imposter syndrome TTP. You have to understand that everyone starts somewhere. So years ago, when I was brand new to the regiment, I was in Green Platoon, and one of the first things you go through is it's called Modern Army Combatives and Special Operations Combative Program. It's like the full name for it. They just call it MACP. And it's a mixture of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, hand-to-hand fighting, and some other martial arts styles. And achieving the clinch is loosely defined as having the opportunity or courage to close the distance between you and your opponent. So imagine 2 folks are standing toe to toe, and they're like we're talking street fight or fist fight or hand-to-hand combat, and you're standing essentially just outside of striking distance, just like you'd see 2 boxers. And you achieve the clinch by basically you're closing the distance, so you're stepping into the strike zone of your opponent, and you achieve it by basically driving your forehead into the opponent's chest, and you place your hands over the biceps of your opponent. And there are some other things that go into this, but for the purposes of explanation, you get the point. Now, this allows you to control your opponent because you've got your head buried in his chest and you've got your arms over his or her biceps. And there's a good chance that when you close that gap, your opponent's going to land some punches. And it's going to hurt. And if you think about this in the context of a new job or task, or you're learning a sport or you're learning anything, there's a lot of parallels here. So every time you tried something new, it hurt at first. You took a few punches, metaphorically speaking. You wanted to learn to ride your bike, you fell off and you got your knee skinned up, stuff like this. It's no different in your life now. You must achieve the clinch in order to master what makes you feel inadequate. You got to close the distance, but obviously in a healthy way, by accepting that you can't master everything as compared to other people and their timeline. So, my mom gave me this piece of advice when I was very young, and it served me well. And she said, there's always going to be somebody bigger, smarter, and insert whatever than you. But it's how you choose to deal with that reality and how you use the things that God gave you. And that's what counts. So recognize that you're achieving the clinch at this point in your new task, and this is normal to take a few face punches. You're gonna get a black eye learning the thing that you're doing. Again, we're talking warranted imposter syndrome. Your skill set is below the learning curve, but you gotta trust the process. Just keep going. All right, number 4, embrace the suck and flip the script. So, imposter syndrome and self-doubt are subtle hints that you're growing. You see, growth happens when you're outside of your comfort zone. And the key is to embrace the imposter syndrome and then flip it around on its head as kind of a validation that you've just achieved the clinch and now you're maneuvering. You're growing. Embrace the suck, flip the script. Number 5. And this one's pretty good. I struggle with this daily. Give yourself some credit and grace. Now, Mel Robbins has a thing where she says to high five yourself in the mirror. And if you aren't familiar with Mel Robbins, I recommend you get familiar. I'll link to a Rich Roll podcast episode where you can get to know her and a little bit more about her. She has this book called The High Five Habit, and I haven't read it, but she talks about in that Rich Roll podcast. And the basic concept is you high five yourself. And Robbins refers to a body of research called neurobics. It's like aerobics, but with your brain, neurobics. And it's conducted by Dr. Lawrence Katz. He's a neurobiologist and researcher at Duke University in North Carolina. And in a neurobic exercise, you combine a routine activity like looking at yourself in the mirror every morning, and you pair it with 2 things: something unexpected that involves your senses and an emotion that you'd like to feel, like celebration or being seen. This is what she talks about on the podcast. So in other words, when you high five yourself in the mirror, you act an act you normally don't do. The mind connects it with positive associations like great job, or you've got this, or I'm proud of you. You can't get a high five from somebody and not at some level have a smile on your face, or feel like a slight pick me up, because the interactions you have had with that action and other people since you were a child are, high fives are good. And again, this kind of goes back to shifting that perspective. So when you celebrate your accomplishments, you feel good about the thing you've done, and you share your achievements. Your life is shaped by your actions and inactions. You take responsibility for your achievements as well as your shortcomings. Recognize that your expertise and talent got you your achievement. Not luck or someone feeling sorry for you, but you had at some level a baseline skill set that got you to where you are. Number 6, talk to someone. Sometimes I find that simply explaining what I'm going through helps me. When I hear my own voice acknowledging what I'm going through, it helps me just by hearing me say it. And oftentimes you'll find that people are going through the exact same thing you are. So, why do you think I'm airing all my dirty laundry on this podcast? It's helping me cope. This is kind of like my coping mechanism, because I force myself to talk about these difficult things, and oftentimes I find the answer in talking about it or thinking through this problem set for me, and then I just kind of vomit it up verbally on this podcast, and hopefully you get something out of it. But again, like I've said it before and I'll say it again, this podcast was really for me, but if it helps you along the way, awesome. This is just my form of verbal journaling.
Thanks for listening to No One Is Coming, It's Up to Us. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. While you're at it, help us spread the word by leaving a rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts. And remember, no one is coming. It's up to us.